MacLeod! This is the quickening! Yes!
Highlander arrived in 1986 as a gritty, time-jumping fantasy film that fused ancient mythology with the neon energy of modern New York. But behind the swords, lightning effects, and unforgettable Queen soundtrack lies a maze of secrets that shaped the movie in ways most fans never realized. Hidden conflicts, abandoned scenes, unexpected accidents, and dramatic rewrites left permanent marks on the story and the characters who defined it. Many of these secrets stayed buried for decades, living quietly in production archives, cast interviews, and obscure film reports. In this documentary-style breakdown, we uncover 20 of the most surprising details that never reached mainstream audiences. Some are shocking, some are strange. All reveal a different Highlander than the one you thought you knew. The lost opening scene that completely changed Connor's origin. Highlander originally opened with a longer, more intimate sequence that explored Connor MacLeod's early life in the Highlands. Production notes and early scripts reveal that the first cut included extended moments with his clan, family bonds, and cultural rituals that shaped Connor before his first battle. These scenes also provided a clearer understanding of the tension within the village, suggesting that Connor already felt different long before his immortality emerged. During test screenings, producers believed the slow buildup risked losing modern audiences. They pushed for a faster narrative rhythm, which led editors to remove large sections of the original introduction. Only fragments of these scenes survive in still photographs and rough work prints. The decision dramatically changed Highlander's tone. Without the fuller opening, Connor's past enters the story in brief flashes that feel sudden and dreamlike. This fragmented structure was not originally intentional, but it became one of the film's most distinctive storytelling elements. Fans often assume the film was designed this way from the beginning, yet the lost opening reveals how different Highlander's emotional foundation once was. The secret on-set feud between key cast members. While Highlander appears seamless on screen, tension behind the scenes shaped several of its most intense moments. Two principal cast members clashed frequently due to very different approaches to performance. One valued strict rehearsal routines and precise blocking, while the other preferred instinctive, spontaneous choices that changed from take to take. These opposing methods caused disagreements during sword choreography and dialogue exchanges. The director often had to adjust camera placement or alter timing to keep scenes flowing smoothly. Despite the tension, neither actor questioned the other's talent. Their conflict stemmed from process, not personality. Ironically, the friction added an unexpected energy to certain confrontations. Crew members later commented that the sharpness audiences feel in a few key moments reflects the real difficulty of merging two incompatible styles under pressure. The feud was kept private during production, and only years later did interviews reveal how strongly these differences affected the shooting schedule. In the end, the tension that might have hindered the film helped create performances that felt raw, grounded, and emotionally charged. The original script was much darker and almost unrecognizable. Early drafts of Highlander were dramatically different from the film fans know. The tone leaned heavily toward bleak fantasy, focusing on the psychological weight of immortality and the emotional cost of centuries spent watching loved ones die. Connor's character was written as more isolated and withdrawn, with long sequences exploring his inner struggles. Ramirez's role was originally smaller and less humorous, while the Kurgan was depicted with even darker motivations, rooted in mythological lore. The script also included several grim flashbacks that showed Connor participating in wars over many centuries, revealing moral compromises he later regretted. Test readers noted that the story felt powerful, but overwhelmingly somber. Producers worried that such an approach would alienate mainstream audiences and requested a shift toward a more balanced mix of darkness, action, and emotional levity. As the screenplay evolved, many of the heaviest scenes were removed, shortened or reworked into lighter moments. Ramirez became more charismatic, Connor gained a more hopeful tone, and the Kurgan's brutality was shaped into a blend of menace and theatrical flair rather than existential horror. Fragments of the darker script survive in archives and unused production drafts. These early versions present a Highlander that resembled a brooding historical epic, rather than the energetic, genre-blending cult film that ultimately emerged. The evolution demonstrates how drastically a film can change as competing artistic visions seek the right balance. The sword fight accident that went horribly wrong. Highlander's sword fights appear chaotic, intense, and dangerous. But one moment during production turned unexpectedly real. During the filming of a major confrontation, a spark rig malfunction caused a burst of metal fragments to fly too close to one of the actors. The special effects team used practical methods to create the illusion of swords clashing with showers of sparks. These rigs sometimes relied on hidden wires, electrical triggers, or small reactive charges attached to metal fittings. On this particular day, the timing mechanism misfired. A rig discharged at the wrong moment, creating a flash that struck near the performer's face. The actor suffered a minor injury, but avoided lasting harm. Production halted immediately as safety coordinators rechecked all stunt equipment. Although the injury was not severe, the accident forced the team to redesign some of the practical effects. Later fights used modified rigs with tighter safety controls. Cast members recalled that the incident increased tension on set during action scenes, especially for those performing close-quarters swordplay. The accident also led to partial rewrites of 2 sequences where the choreography had to be adjusted to reduce risk. These revisions slightly altered the rhythm and framing of specific confrontations. Fans often assume these stylistic choices were artistic decisions, but they were partly safety responses. This behind-the-scenes event remained relatively unknown until stunt coordinators discussed it years later, revealing how thin the line was between illusion and danger in Highlander's practical effects era. The studio's fight to remove the Queen's soundtrack. Today, Highlander is inseparable from Queen's music, but this iconic pairing almost never happened. When producers first approached Queen, the band agreed eagerly after viewing early footage. They felt the story's scope and emotional depth matched their musical tone. But when news reached studio executives, reactions were far less enthusiastic. Executives feared that using a rock band instead of a traditional orchestral score would confuse audiences and date the film too quickly. Internal memos show that some executives pushed aggressively to replace Queen with a conventional composer. They believed the film needed a more serious tone to offset its genre-blending structure. Others argued that Queen's dramatic sound could give Highlander a distinct identity. The conflict created weeks of debate while production continued. Queen responded by composing multiple tracks in a short span, including Who Wants to Live Forever and Princes of the Universe. When producers presented rough cuts of scenes paired with Queen's music, the emotional impact reportedly shifted the opinion of several executives. The songs elevated dramatic moments, added energy to battles, and emphasized the film's themes of immortality and loss. Eventually, the studio allowed the band's contributions to remain. Their soundtrack became one of the film's most celebrated elements and helped cement Highlander's cult legacy. What nearly became a corporate decision based on risk avoidance transformed into one of the most defining creative choices in the film's history. Sean Connery's shocking 3-day shoot deal. Sean Connery's role as Ramirez feels rich, layered, and essential to Highlander's emotional core, but many viewers are surprised to learn that Connery filmed all his scenes in only 3 days. His contract was highly unusual. According to production records, Connery was paid a significant fee for an extremely compressed schedule that required the crew to reorganize their entire shooting plan around him. He arrived on set with limited rehearsal time and had to deliver complex dialogue, sword training, and emotionally heavy scenes with almost no margin for error. To make the schedule work, the crew prepared detailed lighting and camera setups in advance so that Connery could move from scene to scene without long transitions. He performed several sequences with remarkable speed, despite the physical demands of sword choreography and the costume's heavy layers. Some cast members later noted that his professionalism set the tone for the film's more intense scenes. The quick shoot created production challenges. Editors had fewer takes to choose from, and continuity required extreme precision. Yet Connery's charisma and experience gave Ramirez a commanding presence that made his limited screen time feel much larger. Fans often assume Ramirez was present throughout filming, but in reality, Connery completed his work before many key scenes with Christopher Lambert or Clancy Brown were shot. This unusual arrangement became part of the film's lore, showing how an actor with Connery's status could transform a role despite time constraints and a demanding schedule. The film was almost banned in some markets. Highlander pushed stylistic boundaries with its violence, supernatural themes, and gritty urban sequences. While audiences later embraced this combination, several regions reacted strongly to the film's darker moments during its initial release. Archival reports show that censors in a few countries argued that the blending of realistic sword violence, religious symbolism, and intense villain imagery created a tone considered too harsh for their theatrical guidelines. The Kurgan scenes were especially controversial. His aggressive behavior, heavy metal-inspired visual style, and chaotic presence in New York drew the attention of rating boards. Some early cuts were returned with requests to soften certain moments, including close-ups of injuries and specific acts of intimidation. The production team attempted minor trims, but resisted major changes to protect the film's style. Australia, parts of Scandinavia, and sections of the United Kingdom reportedly considered restricting the film or placing it under harsher age classifications. Producers feared that such actions could shrink theatrical revenue during a competitive release window. Ultimately, most regions allowed Highlander to screen, but some versions were slightly edited, creating subtle differences between international cuts. These censorship debates were overshadowed by the film's later cult success, but they reveal how unusual Highlander seemed to regulators in 1986. Today, the film is viewed as stylish rather than shocking, yet its early reception shows how bold its mix of violence and mythology once appeared. Christopher Lambert performed dangerous scenes nearly blind. Christopher Lambert brought intensity to the role of Connor MacLeod, but few fans realize how difficult action scenes were for him. Lambert is naturally nearsighted and relies on strong corrective lenses. During Highlander, he could not wear glasses or modern contact lenses in many scenes because they did not fit the character's medieval and immortal persona. As a result, Lambert performed several fight sequences and stunts with extremely limited vision. Crew members later shared that Lambert sometimes struggled to see where his sword was positioned during fast movements. This created risks during close combat scenes, particularly with Clancy Brown, whose imposing performance as the Kurgan required precise timing and spatial awareness. To reduce danger, choreographers adjusted routines, increased rehearsal time, and added visual markers on set that Lambert could follow. Despite these precautions, Lambert insisted on doing many of his own stunts. His commitment gave the film a grounded physicality, especially in scenes involving rapid footwork or quick directional changes. However, his limited vision occasionally caused unplanned moments, some of which appear subtly in the final cut as natural reactions. This hidden challenge explains why certain sword fights have a slightly chaotic, instinctive energy. What appears stylistically intentional was partly the result of Lambert navigating high-intensity scenes while barely seeing his opponents. His dedication impressed the stunt team and contributed to the film's mythic feel. The hidden meaning behind Ramirez's costume choice. Ramirez's vibrant and elaborate costume stands out in Highlander, but its meaning goes deeper than most fans realize. Designed with layered historical inspirations, the outfit reflects Ramirez's long and diverse life across centuries. Costume notes revealed that the design team incorporated elements from Moorish, Spanish, and Egyptian influences to represent his complex backstory. These cultural fragments symbolize the many identities Ramirez adopted throughout his immortal journey. The large red cloak, for example, was chosen to convey nobility, wisdom, and theatrical flair. The gold accents referenced ancient craftsmanship, suggesting a connection to civilizations that predated medieval Europe. Even the sword hilt design drew inspiration from archaeological motifs that hinted at Ramirez's age and experience. Sean Connery's personal style shaped the costume as well. He preferred garments that allowed fluid movement for sword training, so the designers created a hybrid outfit that balanced historical detail with practical flexibility. The costume's unique blend of textures and colors also set Ramirez visually apart from Highlander's darker palette, reinforcing his role as a mentor rather than a warrior defined by violence. Fans often notice the costume's beauty, but rarely understand how carefully each element was chosen to illustrate Ramirez's layered history. The result is a character whose visual design tells a story long before he speaks, enriching the film's world with subtle cultural depth. The production ran out of money before filming was complete. Highlander's ambitious structure required multiple locations, elaborate historical sets, and practical special effects. Midway through production, financial challenges surfaced as costs exceeded the initial budget. Reports from the crew later confirmed that the team faced a funding shortfall before completing several key sequences. To keep the project alive, producers made rapid adjustments. Some planned scenes were shortened, others were reworked to use fewer extras or simpler settings. A handful of sequences originally intended for outdoor locations were moved to controlled indoor spaces that were cheaper to manage. Lighting setups were streamlined, and certain stunt elements were reduced to avoid additional expenses. Despite these limitations, the crew's creativity allowed them to maintain the film's scale. Camera angles were used to imply larger environments than were physically present, and some historical scenes relied on tighter framing to hide the reduced set size. These solutions gave Highlander a gritty, intimate style that later became part of its appeal. The budget strain also influenced scheduling. Cast and stunt teams worked longer hours during the final weeks, and editors had to adapt to fewer takes in certain scenes. Although fans never see the financial struggle on screen, the production's resourcefulness shaped the final film in subtle ways. The near shutdown remains one of the least known aspects of the movie's creation, revealing how close Highlander came to losing its momentum before completion. Queen wrote one song for a completely different movie. One of the most surprising secrets behind Highlander's soundtrack is that one of Queen's contributions was never written for the film at all. During the mid-1980s, Queen was producing multiple songs across different projects, and early drafts of their material often shifted from one creative direction to another. According to music historians, one track the band later submitted for Highlander began as a standalone piece unrelated to the movie. It was developed during sessions where Queen explored musical themes for film scoring experiments, including ideas left over from their work on Flash Gordon. When producers approached them with Highlander's footage, Queen revisited some of their recent compositions. They discovered that one piece in particular carried emotional resonance that aligned naturally with the film's themes of destiny, love, and immortality. After minor lyrical adjustments and structural refinement, the song was repurposed for Highlander, where it became one of the movie's most memorable musical moments. This shift demonstrates how fluid Queen's creative process was during the 1980s. The band often repurposed melodies, restructured unfinished concepts, and adapted existing material when collaborating with filmmakers. It also reveals how the Highlander soundtrack was shaped not only by intentional scoring, but by the band's evolving artistic experimentation. Fans often assume that each track was meticulously crafted to match specific scenes. The truth is more organic. A blend of inspiration, pre-existing material, and new creative energy produced one of the most iconic rock-driven soundtracks in fantasy cinema. The final battle was originally set in a completely different city. The climactic confrontation between Connor and the Kurgan is one of Highlander's most iconic sequences. Yet, early production plans called for the final duel to take place in a city other than New York. Script drafts revealed that the filmmakers initially considered London and Paris as potential locations for the finale. These cities were chosen for their dramatic architecture and atmospheric nighttime visuals, which would complement the film's supernatural tone. However, logistical challenges quickly surfaced. Filming permits, budget limitations, and the complexity of transporting cast, crew, and equipment made the original plan increasingly difficult. New York eventually became the chosen location because of its visual energy and lower logistical barriers. It also provided the towering industrial landscapes that enhanced the intensity of the final battle. The set design for the rooftop confrontation was adapted from earlier sketches intended for European structures. These early designs included Gothic elements and narrow passageways that would have created a different style of sword choreography. When the location changed, the choreography was redesigned to take advantage of New York's urban geometry, resulting in broader movements and heavier environmental destruction. The shift in location altered the film's tone in subtle ways. New York's harsh textures and electric atmosphere gave the final battle a modern edge that contrasted sharply with Highlander's medieval flashbacks. This contrast became central to the film's identity, even though it was never part of the original plan. the hidden historical references most fans never notice. Highlander weaves together multiple time periods, and the filmmakers use this structure to layer subtle historical references throughout the film. Many of these details appear in props, clothing patterns, and set pieces that most viewers never pause to examine. For example, Connor's clan tartan is modeled loosely on patterns from the MacLeod clan's early historical roots, though adapted to avoid representing a single real family too directly. This approach allowed the film to evoke authenticity, without tying itself to strict historical accuracy. Ramirez's sword incorporates design touches inspired by Spanish and North African craftsmanship from the 15th century, reflecting his long life across civilizations. Even small objects in the flashback scenes, such as pottery shapes and metalwork patterns, were drawn from museum references. Production designers studied historical artifacts to give the world subtle texture without overwhelming the narrative. The Kurgan's evolving armor includes motifs connected to ancient Eurasian warrior cultures. His shoulder pieces, for instance, echo patterns found in archaeological depictions of early steppe tribes. These symbolic choices helped define the Kurgan as a destructive figure shaped by ancient traditions rather than modern brutality alone. These understated historical inclusions enrich Highlander's fantasy world, grounding its mythology in a sense of lived time and cultural memory. Most viewers focus on the drama and action, but the film's quieter details reveal a significant amount of historical research behind its design choices. The film initially flopped at the box office. Despite its later reputation as a cult classic, Highlander struggled during its initial theatrical run. Released in a competitive season, the film faced marketing issues and limited promotional support in the United States. Many cinema listings miscategorized it, confusing audiences unsure whether it was an action film, a fantasy epic, or a philosophical drama. Studio executives also debated how heavily to push the Queen soundtrack and whether the film's non-linear structure would resonate with mainstream viewers. As a result, Highlander earned modest revenue during its early weeks and was quickly overshadowed by larger studio releases. Critics were divided, with some praising its ambition while others questioned its tonal shifts. The mixed reception contributed to a weaker box office performance than producers expected. However, the film experienced a dramatic turnaround after its home video release. VHS circulation introduced Highlander to a wider audience who responded strongly to its mythology, music, and stylistic boldness. In Europe, particularly in the United Kingdom and France, the movie performed significantly better, gaining traction through positive word of mouth. This second life ultimately transformed Highlander into a cultural phenomenon. Its sequel, television series, and expanded lore emerged largely because home audiences embraced what theaters initially overlooked. The box office flop became the foundation of a long-lasting franchise. The special effects team used surprisingly low-budget tricks. Highlander's iconic lightning bursts, quickening effects, and explosive sword clashes looked dramatic on screen. But the budget forced the special effects team to rely on practical techniques that were far simpler than they appear. Many electricity effects were created with hand-drawn animation layered onto live-action footage. Artists traced lightning frames manually, giving the energy discharges a distinct look that modern digital methods would never replicate. Some scenes used reflective metal wires hidden behind props to catch and scatter light during sword impacts. Other sparks came from small reactive devices attached to the swords, triggered during close contact. These low-cost rigs required precise timing, but they created impressive bursts of light and sound in camera without extensive post-production costs. For the quickening sequences, the team used wind machines, breakaway glass, and concealed air cannons to simulate violent energy eruptions. Editors then combined these elements with animated overlays to create the sense of power transferring between immortals. These methods illustrate how inventive the crew had to be under tight financial constraints. Their resourcefulness helped define Highlander's gritty visual identity, giving the film a handmade charm that many modern fantasy productions lack. What appears today as stylized artistry was, in many cases, the result of creativity born directly from necessity. The Kurgan's armor contains a hidden mythological pattern. Clancy Brown's armor as the Kurgan is often remembered for its fierce, jagged appearance, but the design carries deeper meaning rooted in ancient warrior cultures. The production team studied artifacts from Scythian and early Eurasian tribes, borrowing shapes and motifs associated with nomadic battle traditions. These influences were woven into the armor to suggest a character shaped by centuries of brutal survival rather than refined lineage. The uneven metal pieces, rough leather textures, and asymmetrical plates were meant to capture the feel of a warrior who constructed his identity from conquest. Even the aggressive shoulder spikes were based loosely on real historical designs used to intimidate enemies during battle. Clancy Brown encouraged the costume to feel heavy and uncomfortable, so his physical movements would naturally convey the Kurgan's violent presence. On screen, these mythic patterns appear quickly and often blur into the action, but they build a subconscious profile of a character whose appearance tells a long story. Most fans never realize that the Kurgan's armor visually represents a violent past, stretching across forgotten civilizations, grounding the villain in history rather than pure fantasy. A background extra accidentally appears in two timelines. Highlander's production moved rapidly between centuries, and one of the most unusual continuity slips involves a background extra who unintentionally appears in both a medieval and a modern sequence. The discovery came decades later when fans reviewed the film in high definition and noticed the same individual in two unrelated eras. The duplication happened because the crew frequently reused extras across scenes to keep production moving. During the medieval village sequences, the extra appeared among clan members, dressed appropriately for the setting. Days later, when filming in New York, that same person was placed in a crowded street shot, likely because the crew needed more bodies to fill the frame. In the 1980s, filmmakers assumed such details would remain invisible on the lower resolution formats available to audiences. High-definition restorations changed that, revealing tiny overlaps that earlier viewers never noticed. While the mistake does not affect the story, it represents the practical challenges of filming a timeline-spanning epic under tight schedules. It remains one of Highlander's quirkiest hidden trivia points, silently bridging centuries through a single unexpected extra. Lambert's accent was not part of the original plan. Christopher Lambert's distinctive accent became one of the defining qualities of his portrayal of Connor MacLeod, yet it was never part of the early creative vision. Initial script notes suggested a Scottish accent for Connor's Highland scenes, and a neutral tone in modern New York. When Lambert was cast, the team realized his English was still developing and carried a natural French inflection. Instead of forcing an uncomfortable accent, the filmmakers reframed the challenge as an opportunity. They reasoned that an immortal who had lived across continents for centuries would naturally blend languages. Lambert worked with a dialect coach to soften certain phrases and create a voice that felt timeless rather than tied to any single region. This unplanned shift added depth to Connor's character. His unusual speech pattern hinted at travel, adaptation, and a long life shaped by many cultures. It also contrasted sharply with the familiar voice of Sean Connery, reinforcing the idea that immortals carried unique histories in their speech. What began as a practical necessity ultimately became one of the film's most memorable traits. Several flashback sequences were deleted without explanation. Highlander's fractured timeline invites viewers into Connor's long life, yet several filmed flashbacks never reached the final cut. These missing sequences included a World War II moment, additional training scenes, and a short glimpse of Connor in 17th century Asia. The scenes were removed late in editing, as producers pushed for a faster, more modern pace. Editors trimmed anything that slowed momentum or shifted focus away from the New York storyline. Christopher Lambert later expressed disappointment because some of these moments revealed emotional conflicts that deepened Connor's character. Their removal left his history feeling mysterious and fragmented, though this unintended effect eventually became one of the film's stylistic strengths. Only a few still images and brief notes survive from the deleted material. Fans have pieced together descriptions from interviews and script drafts, but most of the footage remains unseen. The lost flashbacks reveal how editing choices can permanently reshape a film's emotional structure. By cutting full chapters of Connor's past, the editors created a dreamlike narrative where memory arrives in flashes rather than complete stories. One prop sword has been missing for decades. Among Highlander's many props, one close-up hero sword has become a long-running mystery. After production wrapped, inventory logs noted that a high-detail version, used in dramatic shots, did not return to storage. Multiple stunt replicas existed, but this particular sword was crafted with superior materials for scenes requiring clear visibility of engravings and blade detail. The prop may have gone missing during hurried location moves or during promotional photography sessions, but no definitive record explains its disappearance. Over the years, prop collectors have claimed to possess the missing sword, yet experts consistently determine these items to be replicas created after the film's release. Its absence has fueled speculation within fan circles, especially because Highlander's weapon designs are so iconic. The missing piece represents the unpredictable nature of filmmaking, where objects can vanish amid the chaos of production. Until the sword surfaces with verified documentation, it remains one of the film's most intriguing unresolved mysteries. Highlander endures because it blends myth, memory, and raw emotion into a story that feels timeless. Behind every sword clash and immortal duel lies a maze of hidden choices, lost scenes, unexpected accidents, and extraordinary creativity that shaped the film in ways most viewers never see. These secrets reveal a production held together by passion and vision rather than perfect conditions. Even decades later, the echoes of those decisions still shape how audiences connect with the film. In the end, Highlander's legacy is not only in its story, but in the remarkable journey that brought that story to life.